Hi guys, I wanted to take a minute to film a short video for you concerning the writing process. That's one of the things that you guys were going to be reading about this week, and certainly something that I like to drive home to students because we often don't think about a writing process when we get down to the writing task. Usually what we think about in the writing process is we receive a writing situation, we procrastinate until the time comes for us to actually draft the paper, and then we very quickly try to write it and submit it within the time frame allotted, and then really don't provide ourselves with enough time to produce a piece of writing that we can not only be proud of, but also one that addresses the questions and topic at hand. So what I want to do in this short video is go through each step in the writing process briefly and give you a rough outline of what that process should look like. Every writer goes through the writing process differently. There's no right or wrong way to perform it, but at some point in the writing any piece really, writers will go through this particular process. So it's 5 main steps, and I'll just list them out for you now, and if you need them written out so that you can have them at your disposal, I'm glad to place them in Blackboard. But step 1 is understanding the writing prompt and beginning to brainstorm how you're going to address the topic at hand. Step 2 is beginning the research process and preparation for the writing task, so getting yourself ready and attuned to what you are going to need to do in order to execute the assignment. Step 3 is drafting, which is usually what we end up skipping towards at the very last minute, and then quickly submitting it without going through the last 2 steps, which I actually would suggest are the most important. So step 4 is revising, and step 5 is editing. So I want to take each piece and outline briefly what happens in those parts of the process. So step 1 is really your way into the assignment. In step 1, you're attempting to understand who your audience is, who you're supposed to be writing this particular piece to, what the expectations are for the writing, so that you can begin to formulate how you're going to respond to that rhetorical situation. So for instance, you might be asked to write a paper on something like the benefits of recycling. But the way that you address that particular writing situation is going to be different if you are addressing that particular topic for your professor, or if you're addressing that particular topic for someone in your community. Understanding who you are writing for and what the task is supposed to do helps to then generate ideas for how you are going to execute it in the writing task. Once you decide what you're going to be writing about, who you're going to be writing that particular piece to, the next step in the process is to begin researching and preparing for the writing task. You may even do a bit of brainstorming here as well. So if you understand who you're going to be addressing and what they need to know, and how you plan to argue your particular point, you need to start gathering evidence that's going to help to support your claim. And you're lucky in that in this class, a lot of the evidence gathering happens in the units that you have throughout the class. So a lot of the research has already been completed for you, but now your task, getting ready for this first writing assignment, is to decide how you are going to use some of that evidence and research to support a particular claim that you're making. And one of the last Lumen exercises asks you to create a thesis statement. And at this point, you should probably, at the very least, take a look at the writing prompt that's coming up for Unit 1, so that you can have a sense of who the audience is, what the expectations are, and you can begin the process of brainstorming and gathering that evidence from the modules to create a strong path forward for your writing project. Step 3 is the drafting process. This is concerned with writing the paper. This is where you actually sit down to the writing task itself. You have a sense of what you need to do, you have a sense of the argument that you want to make, and you have the evidence by which you're going to prove that particular argument. When you're drafting, that process is meant to be messy. It is not meant to be perfect. So what I urge students do in that first part of the drafting process is to just begin by gesturing ideas in. What are the main body paragraphs? What are the main arguments that you're going to attempt to capture within each of the body paragraphs? What is the particular argument that you're trying to make? In the drafting process, you're going through the process of getting everything out on paper in a semi-organized fashion. I think too often students sit down to that drafting process and think that that very first draft that they're going to produce is perfect. And the reality of the writing situation is that drafting is not, again, meant to be perfect at all. I can tell you from my own writing experiences that that first draft is usually really messy, maybe gestures at what I'm trying to talk about, but it's really just getting ideas on paper and attempting to get at least close to the argument that I would like to venture. As I mentioned, the last two parts of the writing process are the most important, so revising and editing. We usually skip over those parts in the process because we were so rushed to try and get the draft finished, get it out to our professor, to meet a particular deadline, not providing ourselves enough time to go through the full 5-step process in the writing process. The reason that revision and editing are so important is because this is where you have the opportunity to really refine what you're writing. In the revising part of the process, this is where you're concerned with looking at your entire paper. Revision is literally re-seeing what you've written in your paper. It's looking at body paragraphs to ensure organization. It's looking at your thesis statement and attaching it to the different body paragraphs. Did I make my argument? Did I connect ideas together? Did I perform the duties that were laid out to me in terms of the writing prompt? Did I address the audience in a way that they needed to be addressed? That's really revision. That part of the process is refining the things that you put into your draft in terms of the larger pieces. Editing is concerned with looking at the sentence level structure of things. Does my paper sound good? Are my sentences fluid? Do I have commas in the right place? Do I have complete sentences throughout, checking for subject and verb in each sentence? Do I need to go back and refine some of that language? Did I misuse a word? Do I need to look up a word that I've used because I'm not quite sure if I've used it properly? This is what you should be doing in the editing process. So 2 parts really in the final step before you turn a paper in is re-seeing your entire work as a whole, reading it for fluidity and connectivity, basically organization and larger structures of your paper. Editing is concerned with those smaller pieces, so looking at the sentence structure, looking at how you have articulated something. Is that language strong, and does it meet the expectations of the audience you're addressing? Last thing that I'll say in terms of the writing process, to ensure that you provide yourself with enough time to see the entire process all the way through, make sure that you look at assignments early. Since we have an assignment that is coming due in the next few days, it would be worthwhile for you to take a look at that prompt now. Begin the process of research and preparation as soon as possible, and draft along the way. So you might begin by writing an introduction perhaps today. You might work on maybe a body paragraph or 2 on the second day, and perhaps on the third day work on a third body paragraph in the conclusion, providing yourself with at least 1 to 2 days for this process of revision and editing. What I like to do when I'm revising and editing a paper is I actually print the piece out with a pen in hand. I read through that draft and I think about what a reader might be looking for in terms of a solid paper. And I make notes to myself for what I want to change, what I want to reorganize, what I might want to redraft, what I might want to add, and give myself enough time to really smooth out the writing in such a way that I am happy with the product that I've completed. If you have any questions about the writing process or are struggling with getting this paper started, please do not hesitate to reach out. I'm glad to talk you through some ideas and look forward to reading the papers you produce.